Good morning, it's Norma Cowie. It's Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock, and here I am with Norma Talks. Well, I just have to say, my phone went very, very early this morning, and I answered it. Nobody said anything. Rolled over because I was in bed, sleeping. And next thing it went again, and so I answered it again. I don't recognize the phone number. Anyway, but it's funny how when a phone rings, the instinct is to answer it and to, find out what it is, especially when you're sleeping, you kind of come out. And I don't usually have, phone calls in the early hours of the morning. It wasn't super early hours, but I was still sleeping. But anyway, that was how my day began. So my eyes are feeling a little tired. Now, as many of you know, I read tarot cards for people. I also do energy transformation work. And very often over the years, people have come to me because they want to change their lives. They want to see things differently. They want to have a different philosophy. They want to, for many reasons, just trying to figure out what's going on. And I've been fortunate enough to be given information, situations to be able to help people. But just lately, and I had to look at this for myself as well, actually, I had some clients who was doing some transformation work, which usually means, we're inside and we're changing things around. And they weren't doing so well. They were having physical reactions and they were just feeling not on top of the world. And that's a little bit unusual. I don't really have that happen very often, but I certainly began to take a look at, okay, what's going on. So I kind of went over everything and found when I make a change, I work off a chart that I have. When you make a change, I always check that it is held. And when I've gone back over this, I found that some of them had not held. Okay, so that's okay. We just try and go through it again to make sure everything's okay. And anyway, to make a long story short, and this is where I'm finally getting there, was that we did our second session because I like to do 3 sessions in order to really kind of get where you want to go. The client once more wasn't feeling well. And so I took another look at it. And also I asked the people who work with me what was going on here. And some of it was about making a decision. Now, our lives are formed, believe it or not, on decisions that we have made. Sometimes we're not aware we're even making a decision. A lot of times we can make a very clear, conscious decision. We've got all the energy aligned, and this is how it is. But so often, truly, that we haven't really consciously decided what we're wanting. Also, another part of that is we get so used to living how we live, our thinking, our feeling, our responding, that it gets frightening to make a change. It was like, because we don't know what it will be like. Forgetting that you can always make a change back. If you don't like what's going on, you can always make this decision didn't quite work out the way I wanted. I can change it. Mostly I found that doesn't happen. We move on, we go further. So I had to actually stop and take a look at where I maybe was doing that myself, like not being consciously making a decision of what I was wanting. And because you see, it's very easy to get into habits. We're all creatures of habits. We get up the same time, we eat the same kind of food, we go to the same kind of places. And very often we don't make the decision to change. You see, the decision is the changing point, because it's like we add a different level of commitment. Now, you might make a decision back, or you may decide, well, I don't really like the way this decision is going. But I find that most of us don't think in the terms of decision making. We just go ahead and do whatever. I was looking at my tarot before I came on today, actually, and I usually work with 3 cards, but I had 2 cards given to me. First of all, number 1 card is the Magician. All things are possible. I love this card. It shows the possibilities. It shows you've got everything there, and it's up to you. But if you look carefully, he's aspiring above to bring the energy down into earth level. And one of the phrases that goes with this symbol is as above, so below. But we have to aspire to that. See the 8 above his head? That shows the spiritual connection. Anyway, there's lots of symbology in this symbol that says everything is possible if you aspire for it. So that's one of the things we need to do. And that's what I find a lot of people who come for transformation work, they're aspiring to make a change. But sometimes they have to make change a little bit different than they anticipate. It's not just me waving my hands around and clearing out the energy. It's about deciding that they really want this. To decide that they're prepared to do what it takes. The other symbol I wanted to bring to your attention was the Hermit. Very simple symbol, actually. It's like almost like a monk or a person with a staff high in the mountains with a lantern, and it's got 5 points in that lantern that's lit. And the key, actually, often that symbol is where I am, you too can be. He's looking down. He's got a staff. So it's a very spiritual symbol, actually, in the sense that you've got to look inside yourself. And it's that connection, which shows up in the Magician, connecting to the higher power. We're not alone on our path. There's many churches, there's many speakers, there's many inspirational people out there all over. And they're talking about the power that is there that you can use to aid you in your life. I was going to say, unfortunately, but that wasn't really how I meant to say that. Is that also what it means is that we have to be ready to let go of our old beliefs and attitudes, to embrace new beliefs and attitudes. And very often the speakers, the teachers, etc., have a certain way of doing that so that you become aware. And I think it's really important that you find people that you're comfortable with, and that or the belief systems that are there. So it's really about where we want to go. But what I'm talking about is decisions here. Sometimes we want to change, excuse me, and we'll do the things we will do in order to have a change, but we don't decide the end result we want. We haven't got that, this is how it's going to be. In other words, sometimes change is not easy. Patterns have to change. Now, I deal a lot with thinking patterns. What is the pattern of the thought? And as I was saying, actually, I had to stop and take a look at me, because the last 2 years I've had health issues. Actually, it's been longer than that, but most of them weren't, the way it was being like the last 2 years. And as I'm getting healthier and more, another set of problems came up. Like, what is this health issue thing? I could say, and it has a large effect. I was a jock as a child. I was a tree climber, and I fell out of them. I had falls. I broke my arm twice. Every bone in this right arm has been broken at some point. I've back issues because of falls. I was a real jock. I played field hockey, and if anyone knows what field hockey, it's not on the ice like here; it's on the grass down in beautiful New Zealand, and I love the game. But I had a gal attack me with a hockey stick, and actually, I think broke part of a bone in my foot. Of course, being down there, very often we just didn't run to the doctor for everything. So because then I had to I kind of not wear shoes for a while, and it kind of reset. But if you push yourself on the bone, you can see where or feel where it is, and not really see it because we don't see inside the skin. So lots of things that went on. And now that I'm older, a lot of problems. Now, what is my decision about that? What am I deciding how to deal? Well, I just deal with it, actually. A lot of the things, back hurts every morning when I get up. And so I give an extra lesson time to warm up, so to speak, and do things that are going to help me, support me. But a lot of it is up here. And I find sometimes I get frustrated and I get down on myself and I get, I don't know how do you say it. Maybe depressed is a word, but I don't feel depressed. That's where it's weird. I don't feel depressed, but I'm not really going and doing things that perhaps I could. Now, am I any different than anybody else that comes to me? And now, as we know, since COVID, I just work through Zoom and or the telephone. But this recently with this particular client, nameless client, I began, one of the things that you've got to make a decision. You've got to decide that you're willing to put your fears aside and go and do what you got to do for what you want. And it's not always easy to change a pattern that you've had for a lot of years. I agree with that. It's not always easy. But when you want something, and that's one of the beautiful things about being a human being, is we have a tenacity, we have a strength, we have a power, and we have mental power if we choose to apply it. What I find very often, we choose to apply our mental power not effectively. So we wonder why all these things keep happening or what's going on or whatever. And yes, our past affects our lives where we are. We're not just making this nice, smooth everything. I don't know. I think sometimes our learning comes from when we've run across the edges or something, or we've made a decision and it's not quite the way you would like it. We make relationships and then later think, how did I do that? What did I get myself in for? But it's knowing that we have the possibility to grab hold of where our lives are. Excuse me a sec. Is to grab hold of our lives and really think consciously and get ourselves to do what we want to do. And to ensure we're just not looking at what we want to do and saying, yes, I want to do that, but then don't carry through. I find that happens a lot to myself and to clients. Or we start off really well and then we get lazy. Or we don't push ourselves to keep up the whatever the decision is that we've decided to do. So it's now a habit. So we want to take something that's new, keep on doing it until actually we don't even think about it. It is a habit. It's how we do it. It's like it's like, what do you say when you go to bed at night in your mind, setting the pattern for where you are, where you're going, for your sleep, etc. And very often, I find most people don't, they just go to bed, lie down, and go to sleep. Whereas for me, there's a little ritual I have. So it's like having these rituals, we maybe can call them, that help you create the lifestyle you want, that help you know where it is, because we're not always going to live a charmed life where nothing goes incorrect, or I don't really want to use the word wrong, but it feels wrong. It feels like, where am I here? What happened? And I came to the conclusion that very often I was creating situations in my life that I had to learn from in order to help other people. Because if I had gone through my life where everything was smooth, where everything was just beautiful and wonderful, which it has been, but if I hadn't hit those rough points, how could I help somebody else get beyond those rough points? How could I understand how they would feel, or even what they really, really want? I think we just want our lives to go smoothly. Because I had my tarot for, since I was 21, I knew everything was possible. I knew also the answer lies within. Now, okay, we've got 78 symbols I can pick from. Those two of the higher arcana are very, very important when you are looking at your life and it's not really working the way you want it to work. When you have a peacefulness within inside you, it's easier to accept some limitations that come along. As you get older, they do come along. I know some people that don't, because they ate well, they exercised, they did everything. But in people like myself who worked in offices where we were sitting all the time after being athletic, yes, it plays a part. So it's like we often have to make a decision. And in my day, the gyms were just beginning and things like that. And I had two little kids, so we put taking here, there, and everywhere. So I did not keep up with the physicality that I grew up with. And that has played a price, yes. The accidents have paid a price. All of that has had an effect, but at the same time, I do what I can. And I go where I can, and I work with what I can. And I have found wonderful people who have helped me over the years. So when you feel stuck, two things to look at. What are your habits? What do you do? Do you do the things to support yourself or not? But most importantly, I would like to suggest that you make a decision to do what you need to do. If you need to change your thinking process, if you need to begin to believe where you need to go, if you want to create an element of how things work, all of these things are incredibly important, because otherwise you're hitting your head against the wall, bang, 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 bang. And then you're wondering why. And then it gets more and more restrictive. It comes in more and more, and it's harder to be able to go create what you want to do. Life is to be enjoyed. You are here. Boy, sorry. I didn't get my voice right this morning. It felt fine. Maybe I'm just talking about things that have a lot of impact on myself. Anyway, because they do have an impact on myself, I have to do a certain amount of mental reevaluation every now and again, because it's very easy just to go along with how it is, not exactly what you want. Change. How do we want to change? Are we aware of the thinking power that goes behind that? I know I talk a lot about how you think and the power of the thought, but it's true. It's not to be looked at lightly. It's not to be put aside and just say, oh, well, I know what to do. I know how I'm doing it. Life has a way of creating curveballs for us. I mean, maybe there's this, some people say this is like a big school and we have exams. I never did like that analogy, but sometimes it felt like it. Sometimes it really felt like I was being under, like having a test. And I didn't like that at all. So it's like what I just found with my life, because it took me in many different ways. And sometimes I would be stuck, and then miracles happened and I'd get unstuck. And that was the amazing thing. And it wasn't that I made a decision, except I just knew that if I trusted, somehow or rather it would work out. I didn't know. And then all of a sudden it would. And that's where those of us that, well, for me, I did have a religious upbringing, sort of. I'm going to say sort of, because it's very diverse, believe me. Some people, if we don't have a belief in a higher power, will say, if we don't have a belief, whatever we call it, there's many names, and it depending on the religion, or maybe not a religion. Although I went to church for a lot of years, I was like mainly two different churches, two different ways of looking at the power. And I learned a lot of basic stuff, which was helped later on. But it's like how to trust an energy that you can't see, that you can't put your hands on. You can only feel it. You can only know that it is there. You can only be aware that your thoughts go out and that energy answers those thoughts without it thinking about whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. If you think it, if you put energy behind it, the universe will bring it back to you one way or another. And over the years, as I look back, sometimes in the most bizarre way, most bizarre, not what you expect. And I find a lot of people, it's like they look at their lives and what they want, and then they have it already decided how it's going to show up, what it's going to look like, where they're going to go, where it's going to happen, what's it going to be like. Excuse me. Where's the faith? Where's the trust? Where's the element that energy that loves you beyond measure? And that's the thing most of us don't get, is how much we're loved. Loved beyond measure. End result. What is the end result you want? You will be shown in the most bizarre way sometimes. I have learned through movies. I have learned through the TV, watching a show. It's like all of a sudden something jumps out at me, like, dunner, and I almost hear the words, pay attention. Because we're not isolated. We're not isolated. But we are in the driver's seat of where we want to go in relation to our lives. If we trust in this power, if we trust in this loving source that is there for us, that guides us, that helps us, that brings us clarity and brings us miracles. Not every day, but when you need it, because you trust it. And you have a brain that creates. It puts out an energy through your daily thoughts, through the special thoughts, when all of a sudden you're contemplating and you give it energy. If you give your thought energy, it is received externally. That's why some people make big misses in their lives, because they'll get a thought and they, oh, wouldn't that be great? But they don't think of consequences of that. Wouldn't this be great? They don't think of the consequences. They don't think the end result. I don't think anybody goes through life where they don't have a regret, where they thought they were doing the best thing for themselves or their family or whatever, and they didn't listen. For me, I found when I look back at a couple of regrets I had, I say had, because you move beyond that. I realized I didn't listen because I was so, could you say, geared up to do what I was doing, or that I wasn't listening. Well, I would get the thought that I get thoughts. I would get the thought like, "What are you doing?" And I'd override it because at that moment I wanted to do this thing, and that happens to a lot of people. But you see, I also learned one of the reasons I did a lot of stuff or things went on certain ways in my life was I wasn't going to be able to help people if I hadn't experienced it. And that's another thing. If you're living like a hermit, like like if you're living like the hermit, you don't have too much interaction with the people or life. So when you become more aware and you're more conscious and you've got the decisions exactly where you want to go, you will find that you can make change, and it doesn't have to be hard. You just have to be aware and redecide. Now, there's one other point. When you make a decision here, to change that decision, you have to make one bigger and heavier. Like, in other words, let's decide I want to go to the store. But then something happens and you have to make another decision. Says, I'm not going to the store. I know this is not a very good example, so I apologize for it. You have to make that not going stronger than the going in order to counter it. And most people don't realize that. You have to get your personal power in there. Power it up. You have to decide, this is what I want. And so many people go along because this is how it's been. You can change your life's trajectory. I always have trouble with that word. Go, because it's got more than two. I don't do three sort of. Oh, see, I'm grouping up the whole thing. But anyway, you're going along and you decided you want to change the trajectory of where you're heading, and you decide that it has to be a stronger decision energetically than the one that you're on in order for it to change. And that's one of the things that the majority of people I find don't understand why. And then they feel like they failed. They didn't fail. They just didn't have the same, that boost of energy you've got to have when you make a decision. For me, I found when I listened to my inner voice, many of them, what I call, well, they're not really mistakes because they're experiences. That would have been different if I'd listened. I would wipe them out. It would come up and I'd listen, and then I'd counter it with my own thought because of what I wanted. Sometimes what we want isn't the best for us. And if we're at the point where we have a little voice that talks to us, we really need to listen to it, because those of us that haven't listened to it paid the price for that. Got ourselves off where we really could go and do and be. Luckily, I'm stubborn, so I got myself back on where I needed to be. But life is like that, and it's okay. Because one of the big tenets that is talked about in many of the spiritual work is that you're forgiven. There really is nothing to forgive. It's just a matter of knowing that you're loved no matter what you do. And because you know you're loved no matter what you do, you're able to get yourself back where you want. And that is by making a decision, and commitment to what you want. And you get your thinking in alignment. You get your thinking in alignment, the emotions will follow. A lot of people, one of the things I've done a lot of the work I've been lately, I don't know what's going on out there. I haven't really looked at that. We have a mind and we have emotions, and they need to be balanced, not led by the mind and not led by the feelings, but to work with both of them. Here I go again. Okay. I didn't get much sleep last night. Phone calls waking me up. I was late going to sleep, and this is the result of that. But anyway, so I'm pretty well finished. So my talk, and I really don't like it when my throat gets croaky. So I'm deciding that I'm going to stop talking. I want you all to create lives that you like. I really do. And one of the keys of that is that balance between the mental and the emotional, that they work together, because that affects your intellect and your creativity as well. And that's been coming up with some of my clients lately. And I go, oh, here we go again. And that's what tends to happen. We have not one, but we'll have 10 doing very similar. So it's really understanding that when you lead by emotion, although I say this is an emotional planet and you're here to learn and understand it, you still can't just override everything with your mind. You got to have it work together. So there's lots of learning to do, but the main thing I came to talk about today was you need to make a decision of what you're really wanting, and not making excuses or thinking, well, maybe this will just last for a while and it'll change. It won't change until you decide what you want to do about it and how you want to do about it. So you've got 2 things to think about. Everything is possible, wrong hand. And the answer lies within you. You're the driver of your life. Where do you want to go? How do you want it to be? Take a moment, take 10 minutes, take half an hour, take a day. Really think about what you really want, and commit. And watch the change. Maybe not going to happen bang, but miracles happen like that. They do. Someone says something to you, you get an offer, all sorts of things will happen. But it's also that takes time to get things back where it's easy and working. So I thank you for listening, and I want to thank Karen for being on this morning. Maggie G, she says, good morning, a happy day. I found you. Thank you for your wise words and experiences, blessings. A lot of people from our Monday night mental mind treatments. And Karen says, thank you very much. I needed this today. There we go. That's why we come on certain times, and it seems like that's what you need to hear. I needed to experience again through my clients. Sometimes that's what happens. They come and then I have to talk to them and I go, oh, okay, I got to get back and, just tidy things up a little bit for myself. I get lazy too. I wish you well. Have a good day. I'll be back on Sunday for my Sunday Thought. You have a great day. Bye.